Hey guys, good morning. Don't mind me while I have my little cup of coffee. I figured that would be like accurate to the way it is in the classroom. Like I tell you, I have to drink more coffee. Um, Good morning from here. It is April 2nd for me. If you are watching this on the day you're supposed to watch it, it is April 9th for you. Um, and yesterday for you, you wrote a poem about poetry. Hopefully, you turned that in. Remember, I did say that you can turn things in late. That's really reserved for if you're having technical difficulties. Email me if you're having like brain block issues and not able to write the poem, like you just can't think of anything. And I'll try and help you with that, okay, to get it done on time. Um, so I will keep pretty regular hours during this e-learning time. I'll obviously be available for our chat on Zoom every week, but also I will be checking my email Monday through Friday, even though technically Monday and Friday aren't school days for you, um, from about 9 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. Um, in an effort to not work all of the time, I am going to try and keep to that. And probably if you email me after 5 p.m., I'm probably not going to respond until the following morning, unless it's like super urgent. But I won't be checking my email all of the time during that time. So trying to enjoy the family togetherness while I can. Okay, so enough about that. Some announcements. Don't forget, as Gabriel reminded you yesterday, he can't remind you today because he's still asleep, that you need to be checking your email to make sure that I haven't sent you further instructions on something. For example, if I get a bunch of emails about basically the same question, I'll send an email out to everyone, because if I get it from more than one person, chances are I was a bit unclear in the directions. And unlike class, you can't raise your hand and ask a question. It's like a one at a time question. So please ask questions if something isn't clear, if something isn't blocked, or something is blocked that should be unblocked. Email me and let me know so I can fix it for everybody, okay? So check your emails. Don't forget also to be reading your nonfiction book. If you haven't yet gotten that book, you haven't ordered it, you need to do so now. Okay? Barnes & Noble is doing curbside pickup, or Amazon obviously is doing delivery. I know that their times for delivery are slowing down because everybody is ordering everything online right now. So whereas you could have gotten 2-day delivery with Amazon Prime, like I ordered some stuff for us to do some artsy projects over spring break, and I didn't get them until like the second week of spring break. So you need to have your book by next week, next Thursday. That is April 16th. You're going to have an assignment where you have to take a picture of your face with the book. Now, if you're able to find it online, I'm allowing that this time. So if you find the full text, just instead of sending me a picture with the book in your hand, send me a link to the website that you're reading it off of, or take a screenshot off your Kindle, or I don't know, figure something out, or email me and we'll figure it out together. So that will be next Thursday. You'll need to have that to show me that you have your book. And you're also going to be turning in a planning sheet. I'll explain that more on next Thursday's assignment. But I had you do this once before where you kind of broke down how many chapters or pages or whatever and when you were going to have certain things read by. So I'm going to have you do that as well for next Thursday, the 16th. I want you to have an end date for your planning sheet for May the 12th. That will be the day I want you to have your book completely read. So have that be your end day. Hopefully we'll be back in school by then and I will see your lovely faces. But if not, I will explain further later what we're going to be doing with the paper. Okay? All right, so enough for announcements. Poem review. Yesterday you learned about enjambment, which is when there's no punctuation at the end of the line, and free verse poetry, which is no rhyme, no rhythm, pattern. There still could be some rhythm, still could be some rhyme, but it's not patterned throughout the entirety of the poem. For the next few lessons, we're going to be talking about the different types of poetry. So if you don't have your notes out, you might want to pop those out, pause this video. But we're going to be talking about multiple types of poetry, the first of which is narrative poetry. And just like the word narrative, narrative means story. A narrative poem is a poem that tells a story. And that can take on a lot of different forms. Some that you're probably pretty familiar with. The longer works are like epics. They're called epics, epic poetry. Probably the most famous that you're familiar with is probably the Odyssey. I think you read excerpts from that maybe your freshman year. And then also the Canterbury Tales, which is something if you take AP Literature, we'll read sections of, not the whole thing, because it's really, really long. And also, I don't think you guys read this anymore in middle school, but I did have a group that used to come through having read it. It's the Epic of Beowulf. It's a great story. They made it into a weird, like, CGI, but the CGI characters look like the actors. I don't know, it was weird. But I mean, it's a relatively good rendering of the story, so it just looks strange. It kind of looks like a video game. But anyway, those are really long, like book-length poems that tell a story, and so they are narrative poems. However, I think there are some stories, or rather some poems, that you are familiar with that are shorter, that are also narrative poems, one of which is why I picked this mug this morning. Let's see, I got to twist it the right way. Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, Nevermore. If you haven't read that, I'm sure you're at least familiar with it. And then I've got some other poems for you on the sheet that you're going to do for part of your assignment today. The Raven, Casey at the Bat, Paul Revere's Ride, Charge of the Light Brigade, which I'd be kind of surprised if you'd heard that before, and then Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. So the big thing with a narrative poem is that it tells a story, but like I mentioned before, that can take on a lot of different forms. But the basic is, you've got a character. Sometimes it is the speaker in the poem, but sometimes it is, like in The Raven, once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. So the I there is the poem, the speaker, sorry, in the poem. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to give you some notes in a minute, and I haven't done that yet. But then sometimes the poem is talking about the characters, like Casey at the Bat, where there's this batter, and he's a big time star, but he keeps missing, but he doesn't even care. And then, I won't spoil it in case you've never heard it and you're going to listen to it today. But so sometimes it's the speaker in the poem telling the story, or sometimes it is just like a third-person omniscient narrator telling the story about characters. So anytime something happens, there's a plot, so to speak, in the poem. Okay, it makes it a narrative poem. And so that is what we're going to study today. You're going to go on the other sheet. I've listed 5, and I've included links for them so you can listen to them, because I think poetry is better when you listen to it read out loud. I tried to find ones where the reader was really cool. James Earl Jones reads a few of them, Casey at the Bat and The Raven. And I think Ian McKellen, who is Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings movies, reads one of them. Maybe The Charge of the Light Brigade? Probably not. Maybe Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. But anyway, that's not important. But a couple of things before you do that. I do want to talk to you about some terms that I want you to know. So again, if you don't have your notes out, grab that. The first thing that should be in your notes is that a narrative poem is a poem that tells a story. And the second part of your notes is going to be some terms. So the first term that I want you to know for a narrative is the term persona, which is spelled like person with an A at the end, persona. The persona is not just in narratives, but also in narratives, the speaker in the poem, the I, or the me. You should never make the assumption that the writer of the poem is the I or the me. So for example, in The Raven, pardon me while I take a sip of my coffee, Edgar Allan Poe isn't the I in the poem. He's telling a story about this non-existent fictional character. And it's the same in other types of poetry, like feely kinds of poetry, which is called lyric, which we'll study later. And you don't ever want to say Poe feels scared, okay? It would be the persona feels scared, okay? Or you could say the speaker in the poem, that's fine. But a persona is a flashier word. Makes you sound a little more educated and in the world of poetry, okay? So 2 terms, narrative, persona. And then I'm going to give you some other terms here in just a minute, but I'm going to stop the video and do a screen recording instead because I want to show you what these things look like. Okay, be right back. Okay guys, back to your notes. I'm going to be using The Raven as a reference just because I like Edgar Allan Poe and in honor of my mug. The first type of rhyme that I want to talk to you about, I can't remember if I prefaced that in the previous video, but we're going to be talking about different types of rhyme. The first type of rhyme I want you guys to know the term for, I'm sure you already know what it is called end rhyme. It is when the ends of the lines rhyme together. So for example, in Poe's first stanza here, we have lore, door, door, and more. Those are all examples of end rhyme, where the ends of the lines rhyme with each other, okay? The second type of rhyme that Poe really illustrates well here is called internal rhyme. Internal rhyme is when words within a single line of poetry rhyme, or when words in the middle of separate lines rhyme. I know that's kind of wordy, so I'm going to explain it and then you can pause the video and write it down maybe in a more concise way. But what you have here is you've got napping and tapping. Those are 2 words in a single line of poetry that rhyme with each other. So that's one way that you can have internal rhyme. So same line, 2 words that rhyme with each other. Another way you can have internal rhyme is when 2 words or 2 or more words within the lines of poetry rhyme. So for example, napping and rapping are both inside the line. They're internal, but they rhyme with each other, okay? So you can have it in a single line, like napping and tapping, or in multiple lines, like napping and rapping, okay? That's internal rhyme. The next one that I want you to know is true rhyme. True rhyme is when words literally rhyme when you say them out loud, like lore and door, okay? Then you have different types of rhyme, like I rhyme. Words that look like they should rhyme, but they don't really rhyme. I don't know that Poe has a good example of this, but like the words to and so, T-O and S-O, they look like they should rhyme because they have the same ending. But because of the way they're pronounced in our dialect, they don't rhyme with each other. So that's I rhyme. And then there's another one that is closely related to that. It's called slant rhyme. And slant rhyme is when it doesn't exactly rhyme, but it kinda sorta rhymes. Like if you said it funny, it would rhyme. Or like if there's an S at the end of one of the words and not at the end of the other word, but everything else about the word rhymes. That's called slant rhyme. Okay? Now, for those last few, I don't have any examples from Poe, but if you look at my example for the narrative poem, I tried to include a few of those. And again, just like yesterday, you don't have to read my poems. They're not great, but that will provide you with an example of some of those other types of rhyme that we don't see in Poe's. Okay? Okay guys, just a quick wrap up now About your assignment, again, for your notes, you should go over the words that we just went over, the terms, persona, and then the different types of rhyme, as well as narrative poetry. And then on the doc that I sent you, or that's on Canvas, you're going to read 2 of those poems and take notes about the plot of those poems. That will come in handy for one of our end of the term assessments for poetry, but then also the final exam. And then your bigger assignment is to write your very own narrative poem. And also remember to label that, highlighting, underlining, bolding, whatever it is that you need to do in order to get that done. Okay? And as I mentioned earlier, I do have a sample that I wrote, and it's not that great, but do what I can. Also, just as a side piece of information, April is National Poetry Month, but April is also for the awareness side of every month having a thing. April is also Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. And so every once in a while I'll throw in a topic or a side fact or something about that. It's a cause that I'm very passionate about, and as your teacher, I wish I was there to be talking with you about this in person, but can't do that. But if you ever needed anything, if you feel unsafe, please know that you can always reach out to me. You can reach out to Deputy Johnson. You can call 911, and there are other toll-free hotlines that you can call if you ever feel unsafe in your own home. My wish for you is that you are always safe where you are and feel loved and all of that. But I know that that is not always the case. So if you ever need anything, please don't feel embarrassed or whatever to reach out to me, okay? Or someone else that you feel that you can trust, okay? I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will post new lessons for you next week. Can't wait to read your poems. Bye, guys.